School is great, really great. But while I was in school, there came a point where I became frustrated, really frustrated. I came to the realization that everything we did was just preparing us so that we would pass our school exams. It was a process of memorization and regurgitation, rather than one about furthering your understanding of the world around you. School teaches you so many things, but one thing it doesn't seem to teach you is how to learn. Hey everyone, my name is Krish and I'm a third year medical student currently studying at the University of Nottingham. During my time at university, my revision methods changed so drastically and I made so many mistakes along the way. As a medical student or even a student of any kind, it's so important to have a fast and effective way of studying to optimize your time and maximize your results. In this video, I'm going to go through all the different studying methods that I've done in the past and evaluate the effectiveness of each of those, and at the end, I'm going to tell you about the method that's worked best for me. Just a quick disclaimer, everyone learns in different ways, so it's useful to figure out what works specifically for you. This video is about my opinion and what has worked for me. So, let's go on a little journey back through my time at university and talk about my different revision methods. In first year, I revised in a very traditional way. I took notes during lectures by essentially copying what the professor was saying word for word, consolidating them after, and then I revised from those notes by passively reading over them a few times. At the time, this was the only method I'd ever known since being at school. It was a very time-consuming method and clearly wasn't very useful to me since I didn't get very good grades. Thankfully, my first year marks don't count towards my final grade, so I'm happy that it helped me identify that my revision method was not ideal. This moment changed my life. After this, I took some time into researching how to learn. I then came across Ali Abdal's video about evidence-based revision tips. To me, there were two take-home messages about the most important things to consider when designing your own revision style. The first was active recall and the second was spaced repetition. Active recall is best explained as actually thinking about what you're learning rather than just passively reading different material. And spaced repetition is where you go over the same thing a number of times with an appropriate time gap in the middle. If you learn something today, likelihood is that you'll forget 50% of it tomorrow, and then by the end of the week, you'll have forgotten 80% of it. This is where spaced repetition comes in, so that you keep replenishing that knowledge, and there is some scientific evidence that after repetition, it's more likely to go into your long-term memory. So, at this point in my life, we've reached second year of uni, and I started to explore various different revision methods. One that stood out to me was flashcards. I bought these Grey's Anatomy flashcards for my anatomy module, and I would very highly recommend this for any medical student or anyone studying anatomy. This fits with the ideologies of both active recall and spaced repetition, in the sense that I was quizzing myself and repeating those quizzes for a short period of time every single day. I also used an app called Anki on my computer, which is essentially a flashcard app where you can make cards and test yourself. One thing I like about Anki is that it has both active recall and spaced repetition as its core values built right into the app. The way I used Anki was I wrote a list of the possible questions and answers for each lecture I had, and then simply converted this into flashcards, which I was then able to access and revise at any time. While this was fairly time consuming, I found that I retained knowledge a lot better than in first year, and this was reflected in my results, which were much higher. While second year was good, my third year exams were even better. This time, I only made two small changes to my revision methods. The first change was that I started revising with my flashcards much earlier than I did in second year, which meant that the amount of spaced repetition I did increased. The second change I made was that I also moved into a house with other medical students, and this additionally had an impact on my results. It was a very different environment where we all encouraged each other to study more. There were times when we taught each other certain topics, and I think this is very important because if you can teach the topic, then it improves your understanding in it too. We also sat together and quizzed each other for the exams, which is just a more fun version of doing flashcards. So, now that we've gone through my personal revision methods, let me quickly summarise. In first year, I revised in the traditional way by reading my notes, which was slow and ineffective. In second year, I revised using flashcards, applying active recall and spaced repetition, which was quicker and much more effective. Third year, I did the same, but revised starting earlier and participated in social revision too. I would highly recommend using flashcards for your revision. In an ideal situation, you would use pre-made flashcards such as the anatomy ones or ones passed down from a friend in the year above. But in a worst case scenario, you could make them yourself, just as I have done. There are three main tools for making flashcards. Number one is to make them on paper, and number two is to make them in Anki, whereas number three is to make them in Quizlet. These are merely tools in your study method, and each and every one of these will be miles more efficient than the traditional writing and reading of your notes. I personally have used Anki for the past couple of years and I really enjoy using it. It's a free software and synchronizes with the cloud, so you can access all your flashcards on any of your devices. Quizlet also has the same features, so because of this, I would recommend either. Leave a comment down below if you would like to watch a video comparison between these two softwares in the future. Rather than using Anki's built-in input system, I generally write my questions and answers in a spreadsheet and then import them directly into Anki to facilitate my revision. I would generally combine them with some of the productivity tips that I mentioned in my last video, linked in the description below, so please check that out if you haven't already. When I'm studying my flashcards, I like to put on some chilled mellow music and start a Pomodoro timer to make sure I'm concentrating at my best level. If you would like a tutorial on how to use Anki, let me know in the comment section below. So, now that you've got a solid revision method, let's get into some tips to optimize your efficiency and effectiveness. Tip number one is to tailor your revision to how you would work best. Just because I find flashcards to be the best method for myself doesn't mean that it will work perfectly for you. Definitely try to experiment with some different methods and stick to what works well for you. Fleming's model divides people into three different types of learning: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. This flashcard method provides a mix of visual and tactile learning, so it works very well for me. Tip number two is to create a revision timetable and stick to it. Some people benefit from a rigid timetable, but I like to create a flexible timetable whilst still ensuring that I cover all the ground I need to cover within a set time period. It's really important to make it realistic, and as I said in my last video, various studies have shown that people can only realistically concentrate for up to 45 minutes, so make sure your allotted times are realistic for your personal concentration span. My third and final tip to you is to relax and try to not panic and cram. If you have a positive mindset and set yourself sufficient breaks to enjoy your personal hobbies, then you're going to be much more efficient with your revision. And it's always nice to have a hobby break as a motivation for studying well. So, that just about wraps up this video. I hope you found this useful and have learned a thing or two about revision. If you've made it this far, then I'd really appreciate it if you could like this video and share it with anyone you think might benefit. Feel free to leave a comment below about your own personal revision methods and any other tips you have. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.